7 days, no war cry, no battle formation, no siege engine. There was silence, and then there was a sound. A sound that, according to the oldest military account in the ancient world, leveled a fortified Bronze Age city in a single moment. Archaeology confirms the city fell. The rubble's real, the ash layers, they're there. The collapsed mud brick is real. What we've never settled is what exactly brought it down. When you actually follow the physics, it's very unsettling. Before we get to the sound, you need to understand where Jericho sits, not just geographically, but geologically. Jericho, ancient Jericho, Tel Es Sultan, is one of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements on our planet. It sits directly on the Dead Sea Transform Fault, one of the most seismically active faults in the entire Middle East. The archaeological record at Tel Es Sultan shows clear, repeated evidence of seismic destruction throughout the late Bronze Age, the exact period that Joshua chapter 6 in the Bible describes. Collapsed walls, burned debris layers, the signature of fast, violent structure failure. So you have a walled city, a violent, active fault line beneath it, and a culture that did watch those walls fall. Now, I want to be careful here because it's a delicate matter. When a seismic active region was shaken during a siege, ancient people didn't look at each other and say, well, that was unfortunate plate tectonics. They described what they experienced, which was an army that marched with horns and then walls that fell. They were not ignorant. That's witness testimony filtered through the only interpretive framework that they had available. Their language described the outcome accurately. They just didn't have the word tectonic. These were people who built water systems, agricultural calendars, and geometric architecture with no power tools. The gap here isn't intelligence, it's vocabulary. Now we're going to talk about weaponization, because even if the earthquake did the physical work, the walls still had to come down psychologically before the first stone even moved. And the account in Joshua, when you strip away the theological framing of it, if you read it as a military operation, it's one of the most sophisticated psychological warfare operations we've ever recorded. So let's walk through what actually happened. The Israelite forces did not march in a mob. They formed a very specific ritualistic procession. Armed shock troops in the front, then 7 priests carrying 7 shofars, the horn. It's a ram's horn. Then there were priests carrying the ark. Then you had your rear guard. And Joshua gave one order before the march began. Do not give a war cry. Do not raise your voices. Do not say a word. The only sound permitted were the shofars, 7 of them blowing continuously. For 6 consecutive days, this procession circled the city. One time. Then it returned to camp. Think about what that does to people on the walls, waiting. Day 1, you're a guard at Jericho. An army arrives. But there's no attack. They walk around you in terrifying, disciplined silence, while 7 instruments scream at you all day. Then they leave. Day 2, same thing. Day 3. By day 4, the psychological damage is compounding faster than the physical. Your adrenaline has nowhere to go. You don't know what these people are about to do. You're not sleeping. Every time those horns start, your nervous system fires a full threat response. Heart rate, cortisol, hypervigilance, and then nothing. No attack. just silence and that sound. The shofar is specifically designed for this kind of thing. It produces harsh, high-frequency bursts in the range most associated with alarm signals in the human nervous system. It doesn't soothe, it agitates. 7 of these for 6 days. It wasn't a religious act. It was a biological assault. Now I know what you're thinking, because I was thinking too. That biblical text claims 40,000 armed men, and any historian worth their methodology will tell you that ancient military accounts routinely inflated their numbers. An army of 40,000 would have made the Israelites a force comparable with Egypt or the Hittites. Not what they were, a nomadic tribal coalition. Real modern estimates put the actual force somewhere between a few thousand and maybe several hundred elite warriors. But when you take this to a physicist, the number is almost irrelevant, because what matters is rhythm. When a group of people march together on a shared surface, they synchronize their footsteps, not because they're trying to, but because synchronized movement is physically efficient. It's unconscious. And synchronized footsteps or footfalls on a fault line city's foundations stop being just footsteps. They become something else. They become a seismic generator. You don't have to believe my word. In 1831, the Broughton Suspension Bridge was destroyed when a regiment of 74 soldiers marched across it in synchronized step. That was England. Not 40,000, 74. The rhythmic frequency matched the bridge's natural resonance, and that was enough. Modern military units worldwide are still to this day given the order to break step when crossing bridges, exactly for this reason. Thousands of soldiers, 7 days. A circular path around a mud brick city on a fault line. They stopped being an army. They became a localized seismic generator. If you were living in the ancient world, you'd know this naturally. Not as physics, but just as truth. Everybody knew it. They were all living in their experience. Babylonian storm gods were described as leveling cities with their roars. In Egyptian spiritualism, the concept of Heka, the power of vocalization, vocal vibration, it was understood as a literal physical force that could alter matter physically in real time. These traditions were recording observed phenomena through the language of the sacred, because the sacred was the only framework large enough, and I mean psychologically large enough, to hold and understand what sound could actually do. Day 7. They march around the city not once this time, but 7 times. On that 7th circuit, the priests blow a single sustained blast, and Joshua gives the command, shout. 6 days of absolute silence broken. Now imagine you're on that wall. Your nervous system has probably been a wreck now for a whole week. You haven't slept. That second that horn changes, a long single note compared to the pattern that you've memorized over the last 6 days. Your body registers that before your mind does. And then 10,000 voices hit you at one time. The psychoacoustic impact of that moment alone. The sudden shift from eerie silence to massive coordinated human sound. It would have been debilitating. Panic. Confusion, physical startle response so bad that trained soldiers might have struggled to function normally. And underneath it all, a fault line that had been quietly absorbing days of rhythmic, ground-borne vibration. The physical walls fell to a seismic event. People's psychological walls had already been trashed for days. That's the synthesis. It's not miracle or earthquake. It's a military operation that's been so precisely engineered, whether intentionally or intuitively, we don't know, that the physical world and the psychological world collapsed at the same time. The text says 40,000. Historians say probably a lot less. But to help you feel the scale of what ancient writers considered an apocalyptic army, Gettysburg, 40,000 men is roughly half of Robert E. Lee's entire army of Northern Virginia. And that army had railroads and industrial supply chains behind it. At the Battle of Somme, the British suffered 50,000 casualties on the very first day alone. On D-Day, 156,000 Allied troops landed in a single 24-hour period. Industrialization completely broke the scale of human conflict. The apocalyptic horde of the ancient world is a minor deployment by modern standards, which means the real question isn't, did they have enough people to do it? It's that even a fraction of what ancient writers described would have been more than enough. The walls of Jericho have been rebuilt and destroyed so many times that archaeologists measure it like tree rings. Every civilization that occupied that city eventually lost it. And the one that lost it most famously lost it to something they couldn't see, couldn't touch, and couldn't fight. We build entire disciplines now: acoustics, psychoacoustics, architectural resonance engineering, to understand what the people at Jericho experienced without having a single instrument or formula. Sound is still the thing that we understand the least and fear the most. It gets inside you without your permission. It changes your chemistry. It can destabilize a bridge, shatter a wine glass, alter your state of consciousness. It can stop your heart. And somewhere in the Bronze Age Middle East, a group of people figured out, empirically, brutally, that if you point enough at it at a wall for long enough, that wall doesn't stand a chance. We haven't learned anything since. We've just learned to do it faster